Stephen A. loves when Big D's in the headlines, and Terrance Williams has been the story this week, but for all the wrong reasons. The Cowboys receiver has been getting slammed by Dallas fans all week after he failed to get out of bounds in the closing seconds of Sunday's loss to the Saints. Williams responding to the criticism yesterday to the Dallas Morning News. Quote, "Well, since I've been here, the fans have been doing this. So if you drop a pass, they say you can't catch. If you do something wrong, they'll blame you. It just comes with the job. I just learned to block people out. Their opinions don't matter to me. At the end of the day, I'm still here. I'm still doing my job. And if you feel like you can come take it, come take it." Mark Schler is still here with us, but I want to start with Stephen A. because you can relate to Terrance here because you often get annoyed at Cowboys fans as well. But Stephen A., are you with him here? Do you think it was smart for Williams to say this?
No, I don't, because he's not an elite producer. His best season, receptions-wise, was 52, which was last season. His best, as well as yardage, because he had 52 receptions for 840 yards. This is not an elite receiver in this game. I think his skill set is above average, but I think that he showed his annoyance, and I'm not sure how wise it was because he's not a high-end producer, and the Dallas Cowboys are not winners. This is a team that's a moribund franchise. We all know the story. 20-plus years without a Super Bowl, only 2 playoff victories in that span over the last 20 years. They have the worst fan base in American history. They are more delusional than any fan base I've ever seen in my life, Schlereth. They will go 1-15 and wake up the next morning and talk about how they're going to win a Super Bowl. It could be Case Keenum or Max Kellerman throwing footballs to them right now, and they'll still say they're going to the Super Bowl. They do not live in reality. They are all caught up in their imagery, the star, now the billion-dollar playpen. They got the owner that takes the helicopter to practice, and as if that's going to do some good. They are all floss, and they are devoid of substance. And now you have a receiver who messed up because he had a brain freeze, forgetting to get out of bounds, and he's got an attitude because a fan base, as delusional as they are, you must give them credit for their loyalty and their belief in you, and you reward them by literally going off on them because they're disgusted at you because, once again, you were devoid of production, failing to get out of bounds so you could get the ball to a kicker that had kicked 4 previous field goals for you, including one for 56 yards, when this field goal, had you gotten out of bounds, would have been for a mere 6 more yards at 62 yards. But that's the Dallas Cowboys fan base problem. Not yours. They got problems all over the place, but I'm not surprised. It's the Cowboys. What else is new? Something to complain about, to steal headlines before they go and stink up another joint on a Sunday afternoon. I'm so surprised.
Well, I will say this.
Let's look at the quote.
Oh, go ahead. You go, okay, Max.
I just want to look at this quote for a second, Mark. So if you drop a pass, they say you can't catch. Well, they're not going to say you can. Mm-hmm. If you do something wrong, they'll blame you. Yeah. And if you do something well, they'll cheer. I mean, this is the way it works, although I do think that at a certain point, if you're a fan, it becomes counterproductive. You want that built-in punishment to be there for the player who doesn't perform. You want them to avoid that and be cheered. But at a certain point, it's counterproductive if it's not helping your team, if it's just to vent if you're the fans. And I got to say something. I love the way Terrance Williams has owned this. Right afterwards, he didn't make any BS excuses. He just said he did a stupid thing, basically. He's like, look, I thought this. I was wrong. This is why I wasn't supposed to do it. Stood by his locker, answered every question, was totally honest about it. What more can he do? Hopefully he learns from his mistake. That's it.
Here's what I would say. I always love it when a guy talks about the fact that he doesn't listen to the noise. He doesn't listen to the fan base. And then he comes out and basically says verbatim what the fan base is talking about. Meaning, yeah, you do listen to the fan base. You know what I'd like to see? Listen, they're entitled to their opinion. They pay for those tickets. They support us, and I screwed up. Bottom line, like you said, Max, we move on. I think deeper, though, going to Stephen A.'s point about the organization, I wasn't in that huddle. I don't know what went down in that huddle. I don't know what they were talking about as an organization on that sideline. I do know this. Being in those situations and having played in those situations, those are things that are said in the huddle before you break the huddle. Guys, you catch this. You have got to get out of bounds. You cannot turn this thing up on every play. It didn't happen once in that drive, guys. It happened twice. It happened twice in that drive. It cost them the first time. They dump it to the running back, who makes a great move, turns up in the middle of the field, has an opportunity probably to run to get out of bounds and save 12 seconds, turns up in the middle of that field, and essentially costs them time there as well. Now, after that happens in that drive, the first thing you would do as an organization in that huddle is say, guys, we can't afford not to get out of bounds. Make sure if you're on the sideline, don't fight for that extra yard, yard and a half. Get your butt out of bounds. And yet it happened again later on in that drive.
Laughing?
That's an organizational issue.
You know what has me laughing about
Sounds
what
like
you're
a
saying?
coaching issue.
The more I think about it, I'm imagining Jason Garrett, on the sidelines, the ultimate cheerleader himself. I mean, his microphone and it should be pom-poms. I mean, that's what he does. He cheers and pats everybody on the back. Even he did it with Des Bryant, even when he caught the touchdown that was overturned because he bobbled it, didn't have control. But you're patting him on the back and shaking him with affection because you know what, you're not paying attention to what's going on. It's not beyond the realm of comprehension, Mark Schlereth, Max Kellerman, that indeed maybe Terrance Williams didn't hear that. I mean, it's the Cowboys that we're talking about.
You know what?
Anything's possible. Anything's possible.
Right. I do know this.
I want to say
Go ahead.
One more thing about Terrance Williams. It is a little tone deaf for him. Like, it would have been better. I don't have a major problem with what he said, but it would have been better if he said, look, of course they're booing me. I messed up. I mean, like, there should have been some kind of acknowledgement, even though he's already owned it, that this is what happens when you mess up. Otherwise, I don't have a beef with him.
Yeah, I know this. 62-yard field goals are hard to make. Okay, they're hard to make. But I know this. 62-yarders with no time on the clock where you don't get a kick it, there's a 0% chance of making those field goals. And that's exactly what they left them. They left themselves zero opportunity to win that game at the end of the game because of the mistakes they made during the course of that drive.
I think they rectify it moving forward. I'm going to hope on that, right? That they're going to run out of bounds. Terrance Williams will run out of bounds moving forward.
Okay, let's hope.
Hopefully not.
Yeah, against the Giants. 16 career TDs in 3 years. When we come back, Max's NFL MVP looked the part in Week 1. Will he look the part against the Broncos this weekend? Mark Schlereth, staying put. Meanwhile, Colts quarterback Andrew Luck isn't buying the notion that the Denver Broncos are a dirty team on defense after a number of questionable hits on Panthers quarterback Cam Newton in Week 1.
I wouldn't use that word. I'd say they play hard. And like any good defense, any good offense, really any good football team, you want to toe that line of aggression. And they certainly are tough, physical, good defense. Sometimes you get hit in the head and a flag comes out or it doesn't come out. I don't worry too much about it. It's a ref's job in a sense, and by and large, I think they do a great job of that. But I can't worry about that. I go out and try to figure out, all right, how can we get first downs? How can we get touchdowns against, what was one of the premier defenses in the league last year, and starting off on that foot.
Luck's 2015 season ended with a lacerated kidney on a clean hit against the Broncos Week 9 last season. Luck and the Colts facing the Broncos in Denver this Sunday. Mark, you know a little something about this team.
Yeah.
What are your expectations for Luck against this Broncos defense?
Listen, the Indianapolis Colts have always played the Broncos well. For whatever reason, they match up well. Luck has had some success. Now, Luck is one of those guys that will hold the ball sometimes, holds it too long sometimes, takes, the lion's share of the punishment in the pocket at times. But he has got this matchup situation in Denver where he's matched up well. And I think it really has to do with their smaller, kind of elite quickness type of wide receivers across the board. Does a great job of spreading the ball, does a great job of getting to those guys with opportunities for run after the catch. But they have played their best football against the Denver Broncos. Now, I look at the Indianapolis Colts, and I'm kidding you not, man. I think they're, talent-wise, a 4-12 team that wins 11 games every year because Andrew Luck is that good. And Max said he's the MVP, or Max is MVP. I'm 100%. I mean, that guy can flat out play. He is great. And they have matched up well with the Denver Broncos. You would look at this on paper based on Week 1, how bad Indianapolis was, especially on the defensive side, and you'd have to give the nod to the Denver Broncos. But still, there's something about that matchup that just bodes
gets
well
them.
for Indianapolis. They just seem to play their best football against this Broncos team, and that's been consistent since Andrew Luck has come into the league and faced the Broncos on almost a yearly basis.
So Luck's the real deal, the team not, and obviously that division getting better. Max.
I agree with Mark exactly there. But playing Denver, you know, you can win the game, but it's almost like fighting Joe Frazier. You might win the fight if you're Muhammad Ali, you know, if you're great. You might win the fight, but what price do you pay afterwards? Because last year, the price Andrew Luck paid was essentially the rest of his season. Those body shots he took ruined his season. So it's not, and even he's saying, you know, they're not dirty. Of course, when Cam Newton says almost the same thing Andrew Luck says, somehow he's criticized, and Andrew Luck isn't. I do suppose Cam Newton was taking shots in the head, and Luck not as much. Illegal shots, Luck not as much. But like Cam Newton, Luck is a big, strong guy who represents most of his team's offense and has probably got too much heart for his own good, or at least his own health. But because of all that, just in terms of this game, even without an offensive line, even with taking a while to get rid of the ball, even with that absurd Denver defense that can get after the passer and can cover the receivers, they have a chance to win. I do believe, I said it before, I do believe Andrew Luck will be the MVP this season. As Mark pointed out, I think they have a chance to win double digits. And when you look at this team, Luck represents a bigger proportion of his team's offense than anyone, maybe including Cam Newton this year. They have a chance to win. Luck will win the MVP, but he will pay a price to beat the Denver Broncos because that line cannot block for him.
That's why Luck is not going to be the MVP. You got problems on your offensive line. You've got problems all over your defense, particularly with your secondary. Now you've got injuries. Darius Butler is out. Vontae Davis is out. Clayton Gaithers is out. You know, all of these guys, when you look at their secondary and the injuries that they incurred just last game, you know, they lost to the Detroit Lions. Jury's still out on how good the Detroit Lions are going to be. But I look at the Indianapolis Colts, and, you know, that Grigson Pagano situation that ultimately Irsay elected to keep in play, it just says to me, you know, that something was wrong. It's just that Irsay didn't want a change in personnel. He didn't want to have wholesale changes, so he's making them work together. But I got to tell you something. I'm not enamored with what I'm seeing around Andrew Luck in terms of the team collectively. I know he's got receivers. Frank Gore is steady, solid, but he's older now. And I don't know how much you can expect from him. I don't know how much you can expect from that offensive line. I don't know how much you can expect from that defense. So to me, Schlereth, Max, even though Andrew Luck has MVP caliber talent, and he has the potential to put up huge results, meaning offensively, I don't think the team itself will end up being good enough for him to garner MVP honors, because at the end of the day, other guys are going to do well, but their teams are going to do better as well, whereas Andrew Luck, in my opinion, is going to suffer because of the personnel around him.
I would totally agree with that.
They're a 4-12
Go ahead.
You mentioned they're a 4-12 team that because of Andrew Luck makes the playoffs, and that was true then. It's probably true now. I think that argues for his MVP candidacy. I want to mention, first time that Andrew Luck goes to Denver and plays, and there's no specter of Peyton Manning there. You know, like that story is now off the table. As recently as last year, it wasn't. And even him playing in Indianapolis, so long as Peyton is in the league, that kind of the shadow of Peyton Manning is there. It's gone, Mark. Does that mean anything for Andrew Luck, do you think?
I don't think so. I mean, Andrew Luck he's a consummate professional. He's going to go out there and he's going to play. And I love the fact that he downplays the dirty defense thing, because ultimately it's about focusing on your job. And I always loved it as a player. And I played for the Denver Broncos, as you guys know, and we were cut blocking machines. And I loved it when teams would complain about how dirty we were and how many cuts we would throw and how many, low blocks we would throw during the course of a game, because you're not focused on defending. You're focused on how we go about doing our business. And so as soon as I'd break the huddle, the very first play of the game, I'd walk up the line of scrimmage and go, hey, man, watch your legs. Watch your legs. And the next thing you know, guys are hitting me in the back of the helmet. I'm cutting a guy down. He's hitting me in the back of the helmet. And Terrell Davis is running for 48 yards, because you're not worried about making a tackle. You're worried about punching me in the back of the helmet. First, I got a helmet on. Second, I got nothing but rocks in my head. You're not going to hurt me doing that. So I love it when people talk about the Denver Broncos being a dirty defense. Do they play over the line? Absolutely, man. Are they super aggressive? Absolutely. But that comes down to officiating. If you're not going to call it, like if you're not going to call helmet-to-helmet hits, man, I'm going to keep throwing. I'm going to keep going out there and playing because that's the mentality of a player. I don't think they're dirty. I think they're super aggressive. And I think it was great that Andrew Luck said, no, they're not dirty. They're aggressive. And that's what great football teams do.
The Broncos are favored by 6. Oh,
Andrew.
Go ahead, Max.
No, I was saying Andrew Luck's also a big, strong guy like Cam Newton, as I mentioned. And the refs do have a tendency to allow more stuff like that on big, strong, tough quarterbacks who aren't going to complain about it. But maybe now the spotlight is on Denver to the point that Luck, Cam, whoever they're playing who fits that description, maybe gets some calls.
Yeah, no question about that. They're going to be scrutinized. There will be scrutiny, and there will be a quick trigger, if you will, from the officials to throw the flag if they do basically cross over that line. So we'll see exactly how tight this game is officiated on Sunday.
No question. Denver favored by 6 at Mile High. And as we alluded to earlier, the Colts trying to avoid going 0-2. Only 12% of those teams making the playoffs for the 3rd straight season.